The first punch came out of nowhere. A fist, dark-knuckled and heavy, cracked against the side of Jackie's face before he even finished tying his belt, and the force spun him sideways into the wooden rack where the training shoes were stored. He caught himself on the edge, tasted copper, and looked up to see two identical faces staring back at him. Same height, same build, same cold expression. The Marcus twins, Darnell and Daryl. And they weren't done. What happened in the next 45 minutes inside that cramped second-floor dojo in Kowloon would become Hong Kong legend, a story whispered about for decades in martial arts circles from Mongkok to Hollywood. The night two brothers tried to break a teenager who refused to stay broken. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. Jackie Chan was 17, not the movie star, not the action hero you're picturing right now with the billion-dollar smile doing backflips off a parking garage. No, this was a skinny, hard-boned kid from the China Drama Academy, where his master, Yu Jim Yuen, had spent the last 10 years beating discipline into him. Literally, bamboo sticks across the back, splits held until muscles tore. Trust me on this. Jackie had been sent to train at a private karate dojo in Kowloon, run by a Japanese instructor named Takeshi Murakami. Murakami was old school. He ran a tight room, clean floors, no shoes past the door. Students bowed when they entered and bowed when they left, and if you forgot, you didn't forget again. Jackie's master had arranged the cross-training because Jackie was getting too comfortable, too loose. Yu Jim Yuen wanted someone to humble him, and Murakami's dojo had a reputation for exactly that. Jackie showed up on a Tuesday evening, carrying a canvas bag and wearing a white GI 2 sizes too big. The place was small, maybe 30 feet by 40, low ceiling, one window facing the harbor, and the smell of old sweat baked into every surface. There were about 15 students on the floor already warming up when Jackie walked in and bowed to Murakami, who nodded once without looking up from the clipboard in his hands. Here's what nobody tells you. Jackie wasn't arrogant. People think he walked into that room with some kind of swagger, some kung fu kid attitude. He didn't. He was nervous. He folded his hands in front of him and stood near the wall, waiting to be told where to go. He'd been trained since age 6 to obey, to shut up, to move when told. That's what a decade at the China Drama Academy does to you. It doesn't build confidence, it builds compliance. The Marcus twins were already there. Darnell and Daryl, 18 years old, born in Detroit, raised in Hong Kong after their father, a military contractor, relocated the family in 1968. They'd been training with Murakami for 3 years. They were his top students. They were also the biggest guys in the room by a wide margin. 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, arms roped with muscle that Jackie didn't have and wouldn't have for another 5 years. They moved through the warm-up drills with a kind of mechanical precision that told you they'd done this 1,000 times and were bored by it. Murakami pointed Jackie to a spot on the floor between 2 other students. Jackie dropped his bag against the wall and stepped onto the mat. He started stretching. His flexibility was absurd. Full splits, forehead to knee, the kind of range that comes from years of forced contortion under a man who didn't care if you cried. A few students glanced over. One of them, a local kid named Wei, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The twins noticed too. Darnell, the one with a thin scar through his left eyebrow, stopped mid-stretch and stared at Jackie for a full 10 seconds. Jackie felt the eyes on him and kept his head down. He wasn't looking for trouble. Trouble was looking for him. Believe me, what happened next set the entire night on fire. Murakami called the class to order. They lined up in rows by rank. Jackie, being new, stood at the back. The class ran through basic kata, structured forms, punches, blocks, kicks executed in sequence. Jackie followed along, adapting quickly. His body knew how to learn movement. That was the one gift the Drama Academy gave him that wasn't wrapped in pain. He picked up the kata within 2 repetitions, while some students who'd been there months still stumbled on the transitions. Murakami noticed. He walked to the back of the room, stood in front of Jackie, and watched him complete the entire 3rd kata without a single mistake. Then he did something that changed the temperature in that room. He said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You. Front row, now." Jackie hesitated. He looked at the students in the front row, all senior, all months or years ahead of him. Murakami didn't repeat himself. Jackie picked up his feet and walked to the front, stepping into the gap Murakami created by shifting two students aside. One of those students was Daryl Marcus. Daryl didn't move immediately. He stood there, looking down at Jackie, who was a full 5 inches shorter. His jaw tightened, his nostrils flared. Then he stepped aside, but he stepped into Jackie's shoulder as he did, bumping him hard enough that Jackie had to plant his foot to keep from stumbling. Jackie said nothing. He took his position and faced the mirror on the front wall. And that's when the whispers started behind him. Get this. In a dojo like Murakami's, rank was everything. Where you stood in formation told the room who you were. Front row meant respect. Front row on your first night meant the instructor was making a statement. And that statement, whether Murakami intended it or not, was a direct challenge to every senior student in the room, especially the twins. The class continued. Murakami moved them into partner drills, basic attack and defense combinations. He paired students by proximity, which meant Jackie ended up facing Darnell Marcus. Darnell looked at Jackie the way you'd look at a stain on your shirt, flat, annoyed, already thinking about how to remove it. You train kung fu, Darnell said. It wasn't a question. Jackie nodded once. That stuff doesn't work in here. Jackie shifted his weight to his back foot and brought his hands up into the ready position Murakami had demonstrated. He didn't respond to the comment. He'd learned a long time ago that words in a training hall were just wind. The hands were what mattered. Murakami called the drill. Attack sequence 1. Step punch to the midsection, defender blocks and counters with reverse punch. Simple, controlled. Darnell attacked first. Now, I swear this happened. Darnell's step punch was not the controlled, measured technique the drill called for. He launched at full force, full speed, a piston shot aimed directly at Jackie's solar plexus. Jackie blocked it, barely, and the impact drove his forearm back into his own chest. He stumbled back a half step. Darnell was already resetting, a thin smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. Jackie countered with the prescribed reverse punch, landing it lightly on Darnell's chest as the drill required. Controlled. Respectful. Darnell looked down at the fist touching his chest and then looked at Jackie with an expression that said, "That's all you've got?" They ran the drill again. Same result. Darnell threw bombs. Jackie absorbed them, adapted, blocked cleaner each time, but never returned the same energy. He kept his counters light, technical, by the book. Murakami was watching from across the room but said nothing. This was part of his teaching method. He let the floor sort itself out. He believed pressure revealed character, and he wanted to see what this new kid was made of. After the 5th repetition, Darnell grabbed Jackie's GI at the collar and pulled him close enough that Jackie could smell the spearmint gum on his breath. "You're in the wrong room, little man. This ain't a movie set." Jackie reached up and removed Darnell's hand from his collar, not aggressively, calmly, finger by finger, the way you'd remove a child's grip from something fragile. He placed Darnell's hand back at his side and stepped back into ready position. Darnell's face changed. Something behind his eyes went from annoyance to genuine hostility. Nobody had ever handled him like that, quietly, precisely, without fear. It was worse than getting hit. Jackie had just told him without a single word that he wasn't intimidated. Here's the thing you need to understand. The Marcus twins had built their reputation in that dojo on power, raw American athletic power. They were faster and stronger than everyone else in the room, and in a karate dojo where striking was king, that made them royalty. Nobody challenged them. Nobody stood in front of them. And nobody, absolutely nobody, removed their hands from their collar with that kind of surgical calm. The partner drills ended. Murakami moved the class into free sparring. This is where it got ugly. Murakami pointed at pairs. When he got to Jackie, he paused. He looked across the room and pointed at Daryl. Not Darnell, the other twin, fresh legs, fresh aggression. Jackie bowed and stepped to the center of the mat. Daryl came forward with his mouthguard already in, hands up, bouncing on the balls of his feet. He was looser than his brother, more athletic. Where Darnell was a straight-line power puncher, Daryl added angles. He circled, he feinted. He threw kicks that came from low and arrived high. The spar began. Daryl opened with a roundhouse kick aimed at Jackie's ribs. Jackie dropped his elbow, absorbed the kick, and immediately closed the distance. This was instinct, China Drama Academy instinct. When someone creates space, you collapse it. When someone extends a limb, you make them regret the extension. Jackie grabbed Daryl's kicking leg, stepped behind his base leg, and swept him to the floor in one motion that took less than 2 seconds. The mat boomed when Daryl's back hit it. The room went quiet. Nobody had put Daryl Marcus on the floor. Not once. Not in 3 years. Murakami's eyebrow lifted half an inch, which was the equivalent of a standing ovation from that man. Daryl got up fast. His face was tight. He reset. The spar continued. This time, Daryl didn't kick. He closed the distance himself, firing straight punches, jab, cross, keeping his attacks tight and controlled, not giving Jackie anything to grab. Smart adjustment. Jackie slipped the first jab, parried the cross, but the second jab caught him clean on the chin. His head snapped back. Daryl followed with a hook to the body that folded Jackie at the waist. Jackie dropped to one knee. He stayed there for a beat, one hand on the mat, breathing. Daryl stood over him, bouncing, waiting. Ready to continue the second Jackie stood. And Jackie stood. He came up with something different in his eyes. Not anger, focus. The kind of focus that narrows the world to a single point, a single target, a single window of opportunity. He'd been holding back, playing by karate rules, fighting inside a system that wasn't his. But that body shot had knocked the politeness out of him. Listen to me carefully. What happened in the next 60 seconds is why people still talk about this night. Daryl threw another jab. Jackie didn't slip it. He caught it. He literally caught Daryl's fist in his open palm, mid-flight, and held it there for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Daryl to feel trapped. Then Jackie stepped to the outside, redirected Daryl's arm across his own body, and delivered a palm strike to Daryl's chest that sent him skidding backward across the mat, arms windmilling, until he crashed into 2 students standing at the edge who barely kept him upright. Daryl's eyes were wide, not with pain, with confusion. He didn't understand what had just happened. The technique wasn't karate. It wasn't anything he recognized. It was Wing Chun trapping mixed with Peking opera acrobatics, mixed with something that didn't have a name yet, something Jackie was inventing in real time. Murakami stepped forward and ended the spar. He looked at Jackie for a long moment. Then he said, again, Darnell this time. The room shifted. You could feel it. Murakami was testing something, or proving something, or maybe he just wanted to see what would happen when you threw gasoline on a fire that was already burning. Darnell stepped onto the mat. He wasn't bouncing. He wasn't loose. He walked forward flat-footed, shoulders squared, hands up tight. This was a man who had decided something. Jackie recognized the body language because he'd seen it 100 times at the Drama Academy, the posture of someone who intended to cause damage and didn't care about the consequences. Mark my words, this is where the story turns. They bowed. They squared up. Darnell didn't wait for a feel-out round. He launched a front kick aimed at Jackie's stomach, immediately followed by a spinning back fist that would have cracked bone if it connected. Jackie ducked the back fist by inches. He felt the wind across the top of his head and came up inside Darnell's guard, where the taller fighter's reach advantage disappeared. Up close, Jackie was faster. His hands worked in combinations that didn't follow karate patterns. Short punches, elbow blocks, wrist redirections. He hit Darnell 3 times in the ribs before Darnell could reset, and each shot was precise, targeting the same spot, stacking pain on top of pain. Darnell clinched. He grabbed Jackie's GI with both hands and used his size to drive Jackie backward toward the wall. Jackie's back hit the mirror. The glass shuddered but didn't break. Darnell pinned him there and drove a knee toward Jackie's midsection. Jackie twisted. The knee hit the wall. Darnell grunted. Kneecap on plaster is not a good feeling, and his grip loosened for half a second. Jackie dropped his weight, slipped under Darnell's arm and emerged behind him. Before Darnell could turn, Jackie kicked the back of his knee. Not hard, just enough to buckle it. Darnell dropped to one knee. Jackie could have followed up. Every instinct in his body told him to. 10 years of training under a man who punished hesitation had wired his nervous system to finish what he started. But he didn't. He stepped back. He returned to ready position. He waited. Darnell got up slowly. His face was a mask, unreadable. But his chest was heaving, and his hands, when he raised them, had a tremor that wasn't there before. They engaged again. Darnell threw a combination. Jab, cross, low kick. Jackie checked the kick, parried the cross, and slipped the jab. Then he did something that made Murakami lean forward. Jackie threw a technique that no one in that room had ever seen in person. He jumped, tucked his knees, rotated his body mid-air, and delivered a crescent kick that traveled over Darnell's guard and connected with the side of his head. Not full force, controlled, but the sheer audacity of it. The athleticism, the precision, the fact that this kid had just gone airborne in a room with a 7-foot ceiling and still landed clean, stunned everyone. Darnell staggered sideways. His mouthguard fell out. A thin line of blood ran from above his ear where the kick had grazed him. Murakami should have stopped it. Any responsible instructor would have. But Murakami was watching something he'd never seen before, and curiosity overruled protocol. This is where it gets real. This is where the twins stopped being individual fighters and became what they'd always been, a unit. Daryl stepped onto the mat. Nobody told him to. He just walked out there, stood beside his brother and faced Jackie. 2 against 1, in a formal karate class, under the eyes of an instructor who did nothing to prevent it. Jackie looked at Murakami. Murakami looked back, and then the old instructor did something that Jackie would remember for the rest of his life. He gave a single, slow nod. Permission. Believe this. Jackie's body changed in that moment. Not his expression, not his posture, his body. The tension that had been sitting in his shoulders since he walked through the door drained out. His hands dropped slightly, fingers loose, not fists. His knees bent a fraction deeper. His weight settled into his hips. He looked like water finding its level. The twins came at him simultaneously. Darnell from the front, Daryl circling right. It was coordinated. They'd done this before, probably 100 times, and the choreography was seamless. Darnell attacked high, Daryl attacked low. If you defended one, the other caught you clean. Jackie didn't defend. He attacked. He drove straight at Darnell, closing the distance so fast that Darnell's punch sailed over his shoulder. Jackie delivered an uppercut to Darnell's chin. Not a karate technique, not a kung fu technique, just a pure, instinctive strike that he'd learned by watching boxing matches on a tiny black-and-white television in the Drama Academy dormitory. Darnell's head snapped back and he stumbled. Daryl's low kick connected with Jackie's thigh. It hurt. Jackie felt the muscle seize. But he'd been hit with bamboo rods across that same leg since he was 7 years old, and pain was a language he was fluent in. He absorbed the kick, pivoted on his damaged leg, and swept Daryl's base foot out from under him with a low hook kick that dropped the second twin onto his back for the second time that night. The mat boomed again. Daryl hit hard, breath left his body. Jackie stood between them. Darnell recovering to his left, Daryl on the floor to his right. For a moment, just a moment, Jackie was completely still, not posing, not performing, just existing in the center of a storm he hadn't asked for and didn't want. You're not going to believe what happened next. Darnell charged. No technique, no form, just a straight bull rush, head down, arms wide. It was desperation. Jackie sidestepped, grabbed Darnell's GI at the shoulder, and used Darnell's own momentum to redirect him into the wall. The impact shook the window frame. A pane of glass cracked from corner to corner but held. Darnell slid down the wall and sat on the floor, dazed. His brother was still on his back, staring at the ceiling. Jackie stood in the center of the mat, barely breathing hard. Murakami stepped forward. He raised one hand. Enough. The room was frozen. 15 students, pressed against the edges of the mat, some with their mouths open. Wei, the local kid, was gripping his own gi at the chest with both hands, knuckles white. Murakami walked to Jackie. He stood directly in front of him, close enough that Jackie had to tilt his head back to meet his eyes. The old instructor studied him the way a jeweler studies a stone, looking for flaws, testing the light. Then he said, in Japanese accented English, "What is your name?" "Chan Kong Sang," Jackie said. "Chan Kong Sang," Murakami repeated. "You do not fight karate." "No, sir." "What do you fight?" Jackie's answer was honest. Maybe the most honest thing he'd ever said. "Whatever works." Murakami stared at him for 3 more seconds. Then he turned to the class. "Reset. Continue drills." The class moved. Students scrambled back to their positions. But the twins didn't move. Daryl rolled onto his side and pushed himself to a seated position. Darnell was still against the wall, touching the side of his head where the crescent kick had landed. They looked at each other. Twin communication, wordless, instantaneous. and something passed between them that nobody else in the room could read. Jackie walked back to his spot in the front row. He straightened his gi. He adjusted his belt. His hands were steady, but the muscle in his left thigh was already stiffening from Daryl's kick. He'd feel that for a week. The rest of the class passed without incident. The twins participated in drills, partnered with other students, said nothing. When Murakami called the session to an end, the students lined up, bowed, and began collecting their things. This is where most people think the story ends. 2 guys tested Jackie. Jackie passed the test. Everybody goes home. But this story doesn't end on the mat. It ends in the alley behind the building, where the streetlight buzzed and the rain had started to fall in sheets. Jackie was walking to the bus stop, his bag over one shoulder, his wet hair flat against his forehead, his GI stuffed into the bag because he hadn't bothered changing. He turned the corner at the end of the block, and there they were, both of them, standing under the overhang of a shuttered electronics shop, arms crossed, waiting. Jackie stopped. He calculated the distance. 8 feet to Darnell, 10 to Daryl. The street behind him was empty. The bus stop was 50 yards ahead. He could run. He'd been trained to run. The Drama Academy had spent years making him an elite acrobat, and acrobats are fast. But something in his gut told him running would make this worse. Not tonight, some other night, some other alley. He set his bag down, slowly, and he stood there, hands at his sides, rain running down his face. Darnell spoke first. "You embarrassed us in there." Jackie didn't respond. "You come into our school, our room, and you put us on the floor in front of everybody." Darnell's voice was low, controlled, but the anger underneath it was structural. It was load-bearing. Remove it and everything else about him would collapse. Jackie shifted his weight forward, just slightly, just enough to be ready. "I didn't choose the partners. I didn't choose 2 against 1. Daryl stepped off the wall. "Doesn't matter. You had a choice about how hard you went. You chose to show off. I chose to survive," Jackie said. And then something happened that broke every expectation Jackie had about this confrontation. Darnell looked at his brother. Daryl looked back, and Darnell laughed. Not a mean laugh, not sarcastic, a real laugh, tired and surprised, the sound of a man recognizing something true when he heard it. "Survive," Darnell repeated. He shook his head. "Man, where'd you learn to fight like that?" Jackie's jaw loosened. He hadn't realized how tight it had been. A school, not a good one. What school teaches you to catch a punch mid-air? The kind that hits you if you don't. Daryl took a step forward. Jackie's hands came up an inch, instinct, but Daryl raised his palms. Open, non-threatening, easy. "We're not here for round 2. Jackie didn't lower his hands. Daryl continued. "We're here because nobody has ever done that to us. Not in this city, not in 3 years. And we want to know if it was luck or if it was real." "It was real," Jackie said. No hesitation, no arrogance, just fact. Darnell pushed off the wall and walked toward Jackie. He stopped at arm's length. In the buzzing streetlight, the scar through his eyebrow looked like a crack in marble. He reached out his hand. Jackie looked at the hand. He looked at Darnell's face. He'd been tricked before. At the Drama Academy, a handshake was sometimes the setup for a throw. Trust was a luxury he'd rarely been able to afford, but he took it. He gripped Darnell's hand and shook it, and Darnell squeezed once, firm, not aggressive, and then let go. "My brother and I have been the best in that room since we walked in," Darnell said. "We got comfortable. You just showed us what comfortable gets you." Daryl came around to Jackie's other side. "Come train with us. Not in Murakami's class. Outside. We've got a garage gym at our father's place in Stanley. Heavy bags, focus mitts, space. We'll teach you what we know. You teach us whatever that was." Jackie picked up his bag from the wet ground. He slung it over his shoulder, and for the first time that night his face softened. Not a smile exactly, something closer to relief, the expression of someone who had been bracing for a war and found something else instead. "Tuesday?" Jackie said. "Tuesday," Daryl confirmed. The 3 of them stood there for a moment in the rain. Then the twins turned and walked down the alley toward the main road. Jackie watched them go. Darnell's stride was slightly off, favoring his left knee where he'd hit the wall. Daryl was rolling his shoulder, working out the soreness from the sweep. They were hurt, They were proud, and they'd just offered respect to the person who'd hurt them. No lie, that takes something most fighters never develop. Not technique, not speed, character. Jackie turned and walked to the bus stop. The rain was coming harder now, drumming on the awnings of the closed shops, turning the street into a black mirror. He sat on the bench under the shelter and waited for the number 7 bus that would take him back to the other side of the harbor. While he sat there, he did something unusual. He looked at his own hands, turned them over, studied the knuckles, the calluses, the small scars across the fingers. These hands had been shaped by a man who believed pain was the only teacher worth listening to. They'd been broken and rebuilt, fractured and taped, forced into shapes that nature never intended. But tonight, for the first time, they'd done something entirely his own. Not Jim Ewan's techniques, not Murakami's karate. Something new, something that didn't have a name yet. He closed his fists, opened them, closed them again. The bus arrived. Jackie got on, paid his fare, and sat in the back corner. The bus was nearly empty. An old woman with a folded umbrella. A man in a factory uniform sleeping against the window. Jackie leaned his head against the glass and felt the engine vibration travel through his skull. He didn't know it yet. He couldn't have known. But the way he'd fought that night, adaptive, improvisational, pulling from every source, refusing to stay inside a single system, that was the beginning. Not the beginning of his career, the beginning of his style, the thing that would eventually make him the biggest action star on the planet. The thing that would fill stadiums and sell tickets and make audiences in 40 countries gasp in their seats. It started here, on a rainy Tuesday in Kowloon, in a second-floor dojo with a cracked window and a bloodstain on the mat, against 2 brothers who came to break him and ended up building him. If this story hit you somewhere, if you felt that moment when Jackie stood alone between 2 fighters and chose not to run, then you already know what this channel is about. Hit subscribe. We don't do ordinary here. The Marcus twins kept their word. The following Tuesday, Jackie showed up at a garage in Stanley. Concrete floor, 2 heavy bags hanging from the ceiling joists, a speed bag mounted on a plywood platform, and a stack of focus mitts in the corner. Darnell was wrapping his hands with white cotton tape. Daryl was warming up with shadow boxing. They nodded when Jackie walked in. Nothing more, no ceremony, no speeches. They trained for 3 hours. Darnell showed Jackie how to generate power from the hip in a straight punch, something Jackie's Wing Chun background had never emphasized. Daryl demonstrated the nuances of low kicks, how to attack the nerve cluster above the knee, how to stack combinations that started with the legs and finished with the hands. Jackie absorbed it all. Then Jackie taught them something. He taught them how to fall, not the controlled break falls of judo, something different. Opera falls, the kind where you drop from a height, hit the ground at a specific angle, disperse the impact across the widest possible surface, and roll back to your feet in a single motion. Useful in performance, even more useful in a real fight, when someone puts you on the ground and you need to get up before they follow you down. Darnell tried it first. He crashed, got up, tried again, crashed softer, tried again. By the 10th attempt, he was flowing. Daryl picked it up faster. He had a natural looseness in his joints that Darnell lacked. They trained together every Tuesday for 7 months. 7 months of garage sessions, sweat on concrete, traded knowledge, mutual improvement. Jackie got stronger, the twins got faster, all 3 of them got better. Years later, when Jackie was filming his first major action sequence, he performed a gag where he fell from a clock tower, hit an awning, bounced off a flagpole, and landed on a moving truck. The stunt coordinator asked him where he'd learned to take impacts like that. Jackie said, "From a garage." The coordinator didn't understand. Jackie didn't explain. The twins eventually moved back to Detroit in 1974 when their father's contract ended. Jackie never trained with them again. He heard through mutual contacts that Darnell opened a martial arts school on the east side of Detroit. Daryl went into private security. They never made it to the movies. They never became famous. But every student who walked into Darnell's school saw a black and white photograph pinned to the wall near the entrance. 3 teenagers in a garage, 2 tall, 1 short, all 3 mid-technique, captured in the split second before contact. Under the photograph, in Darnell's handwriting, was a single sentence: "The best fighter we ever met." Murakami continued teaching in Kowloon until 1982. When asked about his most memorable student, he never mentioned Jackie by name. He'd say only, "There was a boy who fought like he was making it up as he went along, and somehow it worked every time." Jackie went on to become exactly what that rainy Tuesday night had predicted. Not a karate fighter, not a kung fu fighter, a fighter who used whatever worked. He broke bones making movies. He shattered an ankle, cracked his skull, dislocated his shoulder so many times the joint barely held together. Every injury was a version of that same lesson. Survival isn't about style, it's about adaptability. And somewhere in the back of his mind, underneath the fame and the franchises and the Hollywood meetings and the global tours, there was always that dojo, that mat, those two faces. That moment when he stood between two men who wanted to destroy him and found out for the first time what he was actually capable of. Whatever works, that was the answer. That was always the answer. And it started with two brothers who threw the first punch and ended up shaking his hand in the rain. That's the legend, not the punch, not the kick, not the sweep or the crescent or the airborne technique that nobody had a name for. The legend is what happened after. The handshake, the garage, the photograph on the wall. The legend is that three young men who had every reason to hate each other chose something harder than fighting. They chose respect, and respect built all three of them into something none of them could have been alone. That's the story. That's how legends work. They don't start with glory. They start with a fist you didn't see coming and a choice about what to do next.